Hi everyone, my name's Karen and I am UCU's National Education and Training Officer. I'm going to go over with you some of the slides that we put together for the recent marking and assessment boycott training. We've put some notes alongside these slides that you can use in your branches as a guideline if you want to disseminate this among members. You'll obviously want to adapt it for local use. So these slides are essentially aimed at reps and activists, but there is absolutely no reason at all why these can't be shared with members, either at members' meetings or just as a general resource. Okay, so this first slide is the frequently asked questions page for the marking and assessment boycott. So here you will find extensive information around the legalities and the form of a marking assessment boycott. It's really important that everyone knows where to find this information. If you get no further in this presentation at all, please share these pages as widely as possible. They really are your go-to FAQs. So for the next few slides then, we are going to look at how did we get here, why we're taking this action, how did we get to this point, how long will the action be, what is a marking assessment boycott, what form will it take, what will members be doing, what will they not be doing, how we can ensure strong local action, how we can involve members, how we can publicise, share, get support for our actions. And we'll also talk about some of the challenges and how we can prepare to mitigate some of those challenges. So, a very quick roundup of how we got here. The ballot was won, as you know, in October, and then a really successful reballot in April. So that was the 3rd of April. Notice has now been given to the employer, and the marking assessment boycott will start on the 20th of April. So why this particular action? Well, partly because marking and assessment boycott was on the ballot paper as a form of ASOS, action short of a strike, and partly because this action is really the one thing that targets the university's core business. Its business is to produce qualified students, and this really does hit at the core of that main business function. And when HEC considered all the options available, they decided that the pressure that a marking assessment boycott applied would be needed to achieve movement from the employer's side to resolve the dispute. How long will this action last? The marking assessment boycott is continuous industrial action, which means once it's started, it continues until either the dispute is resolved or the union suspends or calls off action. It is possible for a union to state an end date for such action when it's called, but HEC decision was to not put an end date on the action. So it will only be called off if we either win the dispute or the action is suspended. Okay, so just moving on then, what is a marking and assessment boycott? So marking and assessment boycott consists of members refusing to undertake marking or assessment work and assessment-related work that directly relates to all forms of summative assessment. And that's really important to note, that summative assessment, but we'll go on and explain that in a bit more detail. So summative assessment is an assessment that generates a mark or grade that contributes to a formal outcome or grade or classification. So work that generates marks that goes towards a student's final module or grade. This includes both final grades and interim progression marks and grades. So a couple of examples here might be a coursework essay that forms part of a formal grade in an undergrad course or module, marking exam scripts that contribute to course module results, assessing experimental work in, say, lab-based disciplines, where that assessment contributes to a formal grade or module, assessing installations or other types of artwork where that assessment or grade contributes to a formal course, grade or module. So in short, UCU members should, for the duration of the marking and assessment boycott, cease all work that involves marking or assessment that contributes to summative assessment. Also, and we'll talk a bit more about this in a minute, all assessment-related work such as exam invigilation or administration, attendance on exam boards and assessment meetings. Now, it is important to note that formative assessment, meaning assessment that does not lead to an outcome that forms part of a formal course grade, is not affected by the marking and assessment boycott. So marking and assessing students' work in order to provide, say, developmental feedback rather than generate a grade is not covered, and UCU members should continue to do this work that is connected with formative assessment. So the boycott also covers assessment work that is assessment related, so exam invigilation, the processing of marks, submission of completed marking through any university administration procedure, assessment related admin such as the distribution of scripts, papers to be marked, the organisation or preparation of exams, assessment boards or meetings, attendance at exam boards or meetings. So we are talking about summative assessment related work, again, not formative, summative. It's also important that those taking the action do not mark and park. Now, this is where you mark as normal, but you don't forward that to any system for processing. The legal position is that exam scripts, essays, or other materials to be assessed, whether they are hard copy or electronic, are the property of the institution, and the institution can demand their return, marked or unmarked, at any time. And it's for that reason that we should not mark and park, because you could unintentionally undermine the marking assessment boycott by doing that. In instances where student assessment is being undertaken via presentations, members should not take any notes which could be used by others to mark or grade the presentations. Notes taken, either private or otherwise, are the property of the employer and would need to be surrendered if asked for. So again, that would be undermining the marking and assessment boycott. Okay, and as I say, there is lots and lots and lots of further information on those frequently asked questions page. This is just a whistle-stop tour of what a marking and assessment boycott is. So moving on then, how can we involve members? So these are just some ideas around how we can involve members. You will have your own, and hopefully in various forums you'll be able to share your ideas around how to involve members. The first thing to note is know where your members are. So mapping. Mapping is the root of the information you need. You can't organise and support members taking action if you don't know where they are and if you don't know what marking they might be involved in. Conversations are powerful. Talking to members and non-members about the action is probably the most important form of communication. Those taking action need to know what's expected of them and how they will be supportive, and those not taking action will need to know how they can support and bolster the campaign. Share as much as possible how people can counter any management arguments. Keep people informed, use the materials provided, make sure everyone knows where to find the most up-to-date information, share the frequently asked questions page, use the materials on the UCU website and get the message out at every opportunity. Again, the need to counteract management propaganda cannot be understated. Regular meetings with those taking action, those supporting the action. Liverpool, for example, had online meetings every day to stay ahead of the curve and brief those members taking action. Regular contact with those members will help support and coordinate. Something else branches might want to do is start, if you haven't done so already, is start a marking and assessment boycott committee, bearing in mind that things happen really, really quickly. Members will want support really quickly. So any committee needs to be agile and needs to be able to respond swiftly. You can always co-opt people onto those committees if and when needed. Something else branches might want to do, if you haven't done already, is start a local hardship fund, which perhaps HPLs might be able to apply to, just to ease the burden financially for them. The really important thing here is that everybody works together and supports one another. Okay, so just moving on in terms of organising. So creating solidarity is really important. Marking and assessment boycott can be a very lonely affair. Strike action is obvious and very collegiate. Marking assessment boycotts is a very private form of action. So creating solidarity and supporting those people taking it is hugely important. So obviously, in terms of creating solidarity, wider UCU, your branch, your region, other branches from around the country, students, keep them up to date, keep them on board. Local politicians, keep them in the loop. If they're on our side, use them as much as you can. Local trades councils are again a good source of support, and other influential groups. This is an opportunity really to do a branch analysis. In the heat of everything, these sorts of things can be overlooked, but it is worth taking the time to do an analysis of local allies, how you can utilize them, how they can help create solidarity. You might also want to consider which groups might be obstructive and think about how you might mitigate for those for their actions. So column 2 is clarity of message, clear messaging, using the material provided to help frame the message, but always a local angle will prove more engaging for people. So to members, to non-members, to students, to parents. Clarity of message is the one thing we've learnt over action, is the importance of tailoring that message to specific groups. And also this might be a good way of engaging those in those particular groups. So if you are talking to students, get them to help you scope out how a message to students might look, how it might sound, how it will land, and how it will need to be set out for the clarity of that message. What arguments will resonate with each particular group? Relentless conversations. Talk to as many people as possible in the workplace about what is happening and creating that UCU vision for the sector. This is part of what we are trying to do. We are trying to change this sector. So when people are talking, listen to their concerns, set out that UCU vision for your institution, relate that back to their concerns, let them know that the improvements that UCU are demanding, let them know how management may react and that things won't improve unless we stand together. Ensure that they understand the blame is firmly at the feet of the employer and that a different future is possible if we all play our part. And the last one on there is recruit. Any form of action is always an opportunity to recruit. The more members we have, the greater leverage we have. There will be challenges and people should be prepared with the relevant rebuttals. And this is kind of a bit of inoculation, really. So we need to prepare people with the rebuttals to those challenges in the same way as we need to prepare people with the arguments against the things that management will come out with. So it would be completely naive to think that individual managers or the employer more generally are not going to challenge this action. As we said earlier, this is the action that hits them right at the core of their business model. Now, there will be some common rebuttals, and there are some of those that I've put around the sides of these slides, and they're on the UCU website. But the important thing is to let people know that there will be challenges. But good preparation and regular contact with people will give them the confidence to manage those situations. And that's what we're looking at here. We're not saying these things are not going to happen. It's giving people the confidence to manage those situations. Within that, it is also vital to ensure that people know that any mention of pay deductions or any other threats, whether they be outright threats or those little microaggressions, should be reported to the branch immediately, and the advice on the UCU website is followed. And this is why it is really important that your marking and assessment boycott committee are agile enough to be able to respond to these threats and to be able to take advice really quickly. So for members watching this, make sure you have links to people in your branch. For branch activists and reps watching this, make sure you have links to people in your regional office who can sit down with you and help and advise. Okay, so just a bit of a summary then. Mapping is as important as ever. We need to know where the people are who are taking action, where the people are who are supporting them, what types of marking people are doing so that we can make sure they have maximum support at times that they need it. Recruitment is important as ever. The more people we have, the greater leverage we have. The more involved people are, the greater leverage we have. Support for those who are carrying out the boycott. As we were sort of saying earlier, it is quite an individual, it can be quite an insular thing. People need to know that their UCU community has their back. Follow the advice on the website, and if in any doubt at all, talk to your regional office. Okay, so that is a whistle stop marking assessment boycott training. That is the crux of the training sessions that have taken place so far. Please share any information that you have with each other. It is really important that we support one another through this action, and it is vital that any threats, pay deductions, etc., are reported to your regional office, or if you're a member, report them to your branch straight away. Okay, thank you very much for your time.